Hello and welcome to another ChinWag with me, Richard Vobes. It's the 9th of August 2022. I recently had a birthday and I am still in my 50s and I'm not quite yet into my 60s. And yet, people often say, oh, Richard, if you sort of show the slightest twinge in something or you've got to get up and out of a chair and perhaps you're not as sprightly as you once was, they say, oh, it's your age, mate, it's your age. It always sort of bothers me when people talk about age as if when you're in your 50s, they're treating you as if you're in your 80s or 90s. I used to have a friend who was a train driver, and when he was 40, he kept talking about having to slow down now that he was over the hill at 40. Now, 40 to me is a long time ago, unfortunately, but I remember looking at him and thinking, 40, you're only halfway through your life. Why is it people seem to feel older or give the impression that they're older than they really are? What is it in life that is making them feel? Is it media? Is it the world around us? Is it all of us contributing to making each one of us feel a little bit older? I know it's a kind of a joke. You have your birthday and they go, oh, you're another year older. You won't be able to do that as often as you can. And I often think, well, this is a bit of psychobabble, isn't it? It gets into the mind. It feeds into the brain to tell you that actually maybe you can't do those things that you used to do when you were 20 years younger. But actually, I have found by keeping moderately fit, eating a healthy diet, that I'm still quite youthful. I'm very lucky because I'm one of those rare people in life that went to mime school. Mime, this sort of thing. But you could say the same for people who've been to ballet classes or any sort of dance classes or anything that's physical, maybe kung fu and jiu-jitsu and all of those sort of things. In which you have to understand and know a little bit about your body. Because, excuse me, I think that when you do anything of those physical things, you learn some very basic but very important principles about the body on how to move, how to keep the articulations, how to stretch. I think stretching is probably one of the most important things that people can do if they do very little else. If they were to stretch a lot and get the muscles working in different directions by stretching and pulling and loosening up the body and moving about, I think people would feel more energetic and more sprightly, and that actually the age can pass or the dates can pass and the number of years that you've been on this earth will pass, but actually you'll still feel pretty youthful. I still feel as if I'm in my mid to late 20s. And I act as if I am. And I think that's also part of it. It's this whole thing about once you start thinking of yourself as old, it depends what you define as old, I suppose. But I'm going to... sorry, I can't clear my throat at the moment. I'm still getting rid of this little cold, which, of course, I've just said I keep myself moderately fit, and here's me coughing and spluttering all over the place. But anyway, we'll let that pass, hopefully. I still, physically, I don't run particularly, and I don't cycle, but I can if I need to. I do enjoy spurts of energy, but I do a bit of exercise, and I keep myself on the go. I rarely sit down for any length of time. I like to be moving about. But because I went to mime school and learnt articulations of the body and things like that, I do find that I want to keep my body moving and not seizing up. I think once this perception of getting old grabs hold of you, you start to think of your age much older than you really are, so that you start to think, actually, although I'm in my mid-50s, you might start to, or late 50s, I suppose, if I'm brutally honest with myself, you might start to think, well, it's getting to over the hill, and you actually start projecting yourself in your 80s and 90s. Now, I know that one of my viewers is in his early 70s and still climbs up mountains, or at least rock faces. There's a lot of people of a certain age who still go out and do things, and the age thing has not stopped them. And if that's you, I want to hear about it. I want to know how it is that you keep that. What is your secret to keep that going? Is it just simply doing things? Is it not resting and thinking of yourself unable to do things? I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm past all that. I'm too old for this. That's a phrase that I often hear. And it really upsets me when people say, oh, I'm too old for it. And then you look at them and you think, you're not even 50. You're in your late 40s and you're already casting yourself into this 80-year-old decrepit person who can barely move. Now, I'm not saying that 80-year-olds are decrepit and can barely move. I'm just saying that that's almost as if they've willingly added 40 years. I think a lot depends, of course, on your lifestyle. A lot of people have to work in a position in which they're sitting down a lot and they're not moving about. Well, but a lot of people then don't bother, it seems to me, to actually look after themselves. So they're in their 20s and 30s. They think that the youth will stay with them forever. And so they don't exercise, they don't stretch, they don't look after, they don't eat the necessarily the good quality foods to keep everything working. And then as time gets on, they've been sitting in this same sort of position for so many times and they've molded into it. Now, you may argue that there's a number of situations in life that none of us are perfect, and that the various different diseases and complications to the body come along. And of course, I'm not talking about that. Those afflictions that happen that we have no control of, possibly. I'm not actually talking about. I'm talking about that people just seem to, I think, subconsciously don't even know that they could tackle this by basically changing the mindset and thinking, actually, do you know what? I can do this. I may not be able to, go from this lifestyle in which is being relatively sedentary and not really looking after myself, not stretching, not keeping myself majorly fit, not eating the right food and possibly smoking all the wrong stuff and all of that. And then the next day, just by changing your mind like that, expect it. But over time, I think it is possible to change a lot of these things. You've just got to have the will. You've got to be aware of it. So it really bugs me when people say they're too old to do something. But are you like that? Are you somebody who tells yourself day after day after day that you're too old, you're over the hill, it's no good, don't try, whatever? I think that you should be doing things all the time. I was watching a little thing about John Cleese the other day, who's in his 80s now, I believe. And he was writing stuff and he was setting up some courses or something about comedy, and he was still going. And I've never understood this retirement thing. I've never understood why people want... I can understand that they might want to retire from a job that is very dull and boring, and then they end up sitting down doing nothing, and within a few years they're dead. I never want to retire from what I'm doing, because I think all the time that you are able to think about things, that you're able to get up and do something, you have something to get you out of bed, it keeps you motivated, it keeps you fit, and I think you basically live a lot longer and you have a much better lifestyle. But I may be wrong. You may disagree with me. You may think I'm talking absolute rubbish, and possibly I am. But I'd be interested in your thoughts. Are you somebody who does think of yourself and think, age is not a thing? I don't think age is, but people do like to say it to you, don't they? Oh, well, you're an old person now, you won't be able to do that. Does it affect you? It doesn't affect me. I laugh it off. I laugh at people who are of my age and they seem unable to do certain things. And I think, I don't know why. What? I mean, unless, of course, as I say, they've been afflicted with certain diseases and things. Anyway, that's my thoughts. But what are your thoughts on that? And I hope, if nothing else, I may have inspired you to get up and do some stretches. Try and touch the ceiling, touch the toes, try and touch that bend. Explore, if nothing else, what your body can do, and look at some basic, simple... It doesn't have to be hard work, but the benefits are so much more rewarding. Perhaps not the first couple of times you do it. You probably think, oh my God, I'm so stiff. But generally, to keep our bodies working and not just sit down and let all that, the muscles go to waste would be a good thing. Let's have a look at your comments then on some of the videos of recent times, and we'll see what you're talking about. Let's have a look. And we've got here, this is, have you been affected by the stuff in the news? And Rob's Lighting and Tech says, I'm finding more and more people that I know are not consuming the news by whichever media, as they find it to be so worrying and anxiety provoking. And that's, I'm very pleased to hear that. I mean, the trouble is, though, you see, I think in many ways it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I feel that the news people have to make the news seem even worse than ever before, because people are ignoring them because they're so worrying and horrible. And so in order to get people to get attention, that it's almost as if to get that attention, they have to really dramatize everything up so that people will take notice of it, not realizing that that's actually the thing that's putting people off. Although if they underplayed stuff and just said, oh, well, there's a volcano that just exploded and 452,000 people died over there, but Mrs. Jones has managed to find her dog and it's looking very well, then I think people would also switch off and find that incredibly boring. So it's a very difficult place for the mainstream media to be in, because I think we've all now become attuned to the fact that half the time none of this affects us anyway, and the other time is you're just worrying us or overstating everything. However, let's just continue with your point of view, Rob. And he says, I can't go as far as that, living in blissful ignorance, but I have disabled new notifications on my phone and only read the news once daily. I do hate the way that the news is presented in such a dramatic way, and there's no need for extended news programmes. It sometimes seems like the news is more for the benefit of those presenting it, their career development, etc., rather than those who just want to be given the facts as they are. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, people, will sit there and put a spin on something and work people up. But again, everything that you see online is there as, let's put it in inverted commas, entertainment. It's there to try and make money. So if you weren't watching it, if it wasn't disastrous enough and nobody was watching it, they wouldn't be making money. It's a business. And I think a lot of people forget that even news is a business. And so it has to have bums on seats. And without those bums on seats, they would not exist. So this is where one has to take quite a lot of this stuff with a pinch of salt. Andrew Hulson says, world media wants us to be in constant state of fear. That's how it appears. And I think you're right. I mean, I'm not really a great conspiracy theorist. I think that sometimes people can very easily fall when you think, yeah, there's a lot of things that are not right with the world. And a lot of people are thinking along the same lines because a lot of people have access to social media and news media and what have you, and you're kind of all feeling and thinking very similar. And then there's that very difficult line where you can just fall off into the world of conspiracy, because a lot of the stuff, it seems to me, is right on the edge of plausibility. And then there's the conspiracy world. And I sometimes have difficulty with the conspiracy world because when you just look at governments and you see how difficult it is for them to manage just simple things, it does make me wonder how people can really believe that there are these invisible people pulling the strings of even and getting the government to do all this in a, I mean, I heard somebody say the other day that they're thinking of trying to get nano technology into a serum that we're all going to be injected with. And you start to think, wait, okay, I can see how we could end up going down that thought-wise, but in reality, somewhere, if that actually happened, it's like the evidence would be there in front of people. Somebody somewhere with a microscope, whatever electron microscope it is, would be looking at that and going, oh, do you know that there's this nano things, and we've taken these nano things out and we've analysed them, and they are actually doing this. I mean, it would be exposed. It would be exposed, and there would be immense uproar. I just can't see that some of the claims that things are going on can be as organised, because mostly the government struggled to organise a party in a wet paper bag at the best of times, and how they could keep all these things so incredibly secret and all the rest of it. It does baffle me, but there we go. I can easily see, because people do believe the most strangest things. I mean, look at religion. You know, I need say no more. ENG says these experts, still saying, are we affected by things in the news? These experts never seem to explain how they measure volcanic eruptions on climate, many of which happen in our time on Earth. Yes, that's true. They never do. And of course, a lot of these volcanoes that are erupting are pushing in huge quantities of carbon dioxide into the air, much more than a lot of man-made stuff, particularly in recent times where we've been trying to not put so much in, and then a volcano goes in there. But they don't seem to get blamed for the climate change in itself. And that's just something that's been going on for ages and ages, but we always get that discounted. Nigel Lacey says, never watch the mainstream media. It's mostly fake news and nonsense government propaganda. Plenty of other sources to get accurate and honest news. I never let the news bother me, as I have no control over it. And that's an interesting point, Nigel, you make. I think if you don't have any control over certain things, and there's, you know, what can you do about it? But it's not actually affecting you in a massively negative way. I mean, obviously, locking us up during the COVID thing was a massive intrusion of our liberties, and not enough people were standing up saying, "Wait a minute. Do we really want this in a liberated, civilized society where a few people have made the decision that we're going to lock people down and also send the police out with drones if you happen to be walking on the Peak District with nobody else around with a cup of coffee in your hand?" I mean, the nonsense that happened, and the things that got out of control because people got a little bit power mad because they could, oh yes, we'll go and parade around and see if we can capture a few people. Oh, you've sat on a park bench. My goodness, we'll have you arrested and put in prison. I mean, again, going back to the conspiracy and how people can get indoctrinated with these stupid ideas. The fact that the police, who you would think, or you would hope, possibly, you would hope would have a lot of common sense about what they've been asked to do, and then think, hang on a minute, arresting somebody for sitting on a park bench, albeit during a pandemic when there's nobody really about, especially some of these elderly people, and you think, hang on, you've really lost the sense of what being a police person is. Who are you serving? Are you serving the general public, keeping people safe? Or are you serving yourself and trying to, I don't know, better your career or be seen in front of your colleagues for arresting people or getting the numbers up, you know, or all the rest of it? I mean, it just seems absolutely, totally barking. The police that arrested that chap who I saw on social media had been arrested for sharing somebody else's tweet, just for sharing a tweet online. He didn't write it. It's just, you know, been shared, and he was arrested, and then eventually all the charges were dropped. I just beggars belief that people's mindset can be changed that much that they almost don't know what they're doing anymore. They cannot look outside of the goldfish bowl. They go, oh yeah, he shared a tweet, bloody hell, you know, he is a danger to society, we must take him in and arrest him. And you think, I'm sorry, he shared a tweet. He didn't break into somebody's house. He didn't bash a little old lady over the head and steal her husband's medals, war medals. They didn't blow up a car, hasn't caused chaos and mayhem, just shared a tweet. And two policemen have gone with we are paying them. This is what it also irritates me. We're paying these people to go and do this. And you think, no, that's not what I want my money that I pay towards the police out of my taxes to go to. I want them to find those people who've nicked my car, or to have assaulted that woman over there and nicked her purse. I don't want them to go and just do a soft, easy, oh, look, someone shared a tweet, we don't like that. It's none of their sodding business. That's not a law-breaking thing. It just, that sort of thing, it drives me mad. So how we've got to a society in which that has happened, it boggles my mind. But I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had their mind boggled. Ingram Carr says, when things happen in the news, some people ask me what I think, but sometimes I'm completely unaware. I haven't read newspapers since 1998, and I haven't watched the news or the weather since 2007. In fact, I've not watched TV, per se, since 2010. I do hear about what's going on through YouTube, Twitter, but I can be selective with what I want to read. And it's not rammed down my throat or sensationalised. With the weather, I look out the door each day and dress appropriately. Absolutely. And that's what people used to do for years and years and years, isn't it? I mean, when you think in the olden days before news media or anything like this, even during the First World War, the news reports would come back weeks later, and you would read in the paper that, a week or two, there was this awful battle. And you're not affected by it because it's happened. One of the problems, I think, with the news media at the moment is that things go on and you're feeling guilty for living in a world perhaps where everything is okay, and you're hearing about all these starving people on the other side of the world, which is of course unfortunate and very sad, but you're only being told about that particular group of starving people on that side of the world, not that group that's being attacked and molested by somebody else, or those people who have done such and such or have had something happen to you. So the news is so selective, and our emotions are being shifted to certain things for whatever reason, and we're feeling sorry for those. Meanwhile, lots of atrocities are going on, and whereas in the old days, when you were just a farm labourer or you were, the local blacksmith, the gossip of the world news was coming from you heard what they doing down the village, down the road there? Have you heard that? Have you? It's outrageous. They're getting some steam threshing machine in here. I'm not sure that's going to put a lot of people out of work, that is. Oh, we'll have to have a meeting down at the Cow and Crow this afternoon and see if we can put a stop. But it's all local stuff, wasn't it? It was all local. It's all stuff that actually affected people, that actually affected those people in the community, and it was based on people around them. And in the last 150 years, we've started to worry too much, in my opinion, about all these other people in the other world that most of us can do nothing about, and yet we'll have all that anxiety and nerves about it, which is barking. Anyway, thank you very much for all those wonderful comments. There's plenty more in there for you to go and investigate, and I appreciate everybody adding to the comments. I can only obviously read a few of them in the small amount of time that I want to record this. So my question to you of the day is all about the whatever it was I was talking at the beginning, which has now escaped me because I've got so into the news media. But anyway, you know what it was because you've been watching, and now I'm floundering and embarrassing myself. So do leave your comments. I'd be love to hear you on the subject of the day, and I will catch up with you on the next one, which hopefully will be tomorrow, and I'll be a little bit more alert to the subject that I've just started. Till next time, bye.